Smoking to the sommelier-ish, ukulele J.
Hi everybody. Today before the video, I'm going to do a little bit of education on aging beef because I get so many questions on how do you do it? Do you need special equipment? And the answer is you do not need special equipment. You can do it with just a special refrigerator, an aging locker, or you can get one of the aging bags that are out there, which is what I use to age your beef. And it's very, very simple. So the process changes beef by two means. First, moisture is evaporated from the muscle, which results in the process of what they call desiccation. This creates a greater concentration of beef flavor and taste. Secondly, the beef's natural enzymes break down the connective tissue in the muscle, which leads to more tender beef. And you'll see in my video, I can push your finger through the beef. That's what happens after a period of time. At 7 days, the collagen's breaking down, but the steak won't have the flavor or texture or the qualities that you really look for in a dry aged steak. And steak is not sold aged with this process because the meat is still, really bright. It hasn't dried out. It will darken eventually as it ages and dries, but right now at 7 days, it's not ready. 21 days, the steak loses about 10% of its weight in the first 3 weeks through evaporation. The water seeps out the front and the back of the meat, but if you have the bags, what's happening is that water actually evaporates, the air goes in, and your meat will continue to age without getting moldy, or bad mold, I should say. But the fat and the bone on the sides of the steak, they actually make it waterproof in that aging process because the meat shrinks and the steaks will become more concave as they age. And although the fat doesn't shrink, it does darken the aging process, and you'll notice it kind of distorts the meat. So you do want to flip your meat, and eventually when it's done, it may look a little oblong, but that's okay. We're going to fix that. At 30 days, this is the most commonly requested aging in steaks, or 28 days. The steaks develop the flavor, the texture qualities associated with dry aged meat, although not intense, it is there. The meat gets very tender at that point with a flavor that is just hard to describe other than an extremely meaty, kind of nutty flavor that you just can't get without that aging. And at this point, the steak's lost about 15% of its total weight. So you're going to notice that meat shrinks down quite a bit. You buy a nice big cut from, Winco or Costco. You put it in, you're like, yeah, and then you start aging it. You leave it alone after a while, and you come back, 25 days later and look at it, and it's like this. You think, what happened to my meat? That's normal. But let me tell you, you're going to take a primal cut of a New York or a ribeye, which are the two that I age the most. I age them for about 55 days. I find 28 days, just the flavor's not there for me. It's almost so subtle I can't tell. And at 75 or 90 days, it's really intense, which I like, but most people that eat steak with me don't like that. So I find 45 days to 55 days is really magical. The steak has a little more funk than the one at 30. And the thing that's great is the steak has only lost a fraction more of its weight at that point for the flavor intensity that you get. And the fat changes as well. So it's important not to trim off all that fat in the process once you're done in the cooking process, because that's going to have some really incredible flavor. Now at 90 days, the white crust develops even more. And on some meats, you'll notice it almost looks moldy. Well, this crust actually protects the meat in the same way that a rind does from cheese. And you shave the exterior off that meat after you slice them up. You're going to trim around it as you see in the video, and that's how they do it before they sell it. 120 days is only a very high-end handful of restaurants that will even put steak out at 120 days. The steak's lost about 35% of its original weight at that point, and a steak that's aged this long has a really funky flavor as you describe it. It's almost off-putting to some people, but for real beef aficionados and lovers, they love that funk. So it's really important for anyone who's going to enjoy aged beef to make sure you find an aging process and a time that works for you. I do 55 days. It's hard to wait 2 months, but I find that's the magical number. I get that nice hard pellicle. I do get shrinkage where I lose, a good percentage of the weight of the meat. But I could buy a $100 piece of Primal New York or ribeye, and when I cut that up, those steaks would sell for $100 at any high-end restaurant in Chicago, LA, New York City, if you can find things at 55 days. I've seen them at 45. I have not seen any restaurants, even some of the higher ones in New York, that are beyond 55 days of the aging process, because they have to then inventory that meat if they're doing it themselves for a very long time, and they have to sell it for a lot of money to get their money back. So if you want to take a $100 piece of meat and turn it into a $1,000 piece of meat, go out and start learning how to do your aging. If you screw it up, it's a small investment, but once you nail it down, it's absolutely scintillating. And now, our featured presentation. Okay, everybody, it's time to get those 55-day aged steaks out, and here we go. Time to wake up from your nappy. Time to wake up from your nappy. Look at that beautiful dry-aged New York strip. Oh, that is just heaven. A nice tough pellicle on top. Very nice. Look at the pellicle on this 55-day dry-aged process. Absolutely scintillating, gorgeous color, perfectly done. A little tip to get nice, even steaks is to make a paper template on your printer. It's really easy to do. Here I use the template to make my perfect 1 1/4 inch steaks. 1 1/2 is great if you want them really thick, but surprisingly 1 1/4 inches is thick enough for a really great steak that you can cook on a charcoal grill or a smoker and get a nice medium rare center. The inside is going to be really yummy. Oh, you want to see this? Look at that. Beautiful, beautiful marbling all throughout, evenly throughout the meat. Tightens up that meat and that fat, and it's super, I mean, I could take my finger and probably push it all the way through. It's so tender. We don't want to do that though. Absolutely beautiful. Look at that. Fantastic. Nice even marbling throughout. We're going to trim off a little bit of here. Still want to leave a little fat around the edges. And then we'll trim off some of this pellicle to get some really, really incredible steaks. Look at how the aging makes this meat scintillating. Here are all the cuts at a perfect 1 1/4 inches. Look how beautiful that looks. And now we're going to trim it. Hello, is anybody home? Oh yeah, it's hard. That's aged beef, baby. 55 days right there. This is how you sear a steak. Oh, look at that. Gorgeous. Getting ready for the turn, only at 30 seconds. A thing of beauty. This small end cut of the New York strip was perfect medium rare. Thanks for watching.
Smoking to the sommelier-ish. Ukulele, ukulele J.